I share my own story here because I think it's a common one. And even if the specifics aren't your story, I'm sure you can identify with the theme. When I was going through my own divorce, my husband at the time and I hit a major bump in the road when it came to agreeing on a parenting schedule. You see, he was a good dad and he wanted to see our son as much as possible. I didn't object to that. The problem I had was his job required him to travel extensively. It varied week to week and month to month. He couldn't always give me a ton of advance notice. I wanted a consistent schedule. I spent my entire marriage living our lives around his travel schedule. I didn't want to live my life around it post-divorce too. So I told him we needed to have a consistent schedule, and if he had to travel during his parenting time, too bad. He missed his time. I wasn't going to give up my parenting time because he had work. It was not my problem. In other words, I was being just a little bit stubborn. What I was really doing was making this about me and not my son. Clearly, I was so bitter and resentful about everything revolving around his schedule that I became irrationally tenacious. And for a while, this is what we did. If he was traveling on a Tuesday and that was his day, I would not give up my Wednesday. I doubled down in my position that this was his problem and not mine. But time soon revealed that my stubbornness was detrimental to our son, because there were weeks when he was gone a couple days each week, so if I didn't switch days with him, there was a long stretch of time my son was not seeing his dad. And that so-called victory of having a set schedule was irresponsible, even if my point was valid. My story is something I often hear when one parent has to travel or has shift work or some sort of rotating schedule. Parenting schedules are not one size fits all. You can customize your schedule to your life so that it fits into your work needs and your child's needs. But here's another point. The schedule you come up with now will likely have to be modified or adjusted later on as your child grows. This is especially true if your child is young now. An 8-month-old is going to need a different schedule than a 13-year-old. This quote sums up parenting regardless if you are married or divorced. It sums up life, really. Notice that the stiffest tree is most easily cracked, while the bamboo or willow survives by bending with the wind. Today, as we talk about creating a parenting plan, I challenge you to be a willow. The key to creating something that is child-centered is to keep in mind the answer to the question, what will be best for my child? So in my situation, not bending or agreeing to switch days when my ex had to travel was not good for my son, but only good for my ego. So let's get to it. First, you need to decide legal and physical custody. It is common to mix these terms up, and often a client will come to me and say with absolute determination that they want sole custody. But what they're really meaning is they want physical custody and not sole legal custody. So let's break it down. Legal custody means decision making. That means who is the one making major decisions about your child. The default is that both parents have joint legal custody. That means no one can schedule a medical procedure for your child or change schools or have him or her baptized without an agreement from both parents. Joint legal custody means all health, medical, religious, and educational decisions must be made jointly. Whether or not you feed your child a grilled cheese or turkey sandwich for lunch is not something that needs to be decided jointly. The intent is for it to include all major decisions. Sole custody, on the other hand, is if one parent is the primary decision maker. This designation could be seen if there's a good reason why joint legal custody won't work. For example, if one parent has an ongoing substance abuse issue, sole legal custody might be awarded. If one parent is incarcerated, this might be another reason. Or sometimes when the level of conflict is so high between the parents, the court might determine that it will be nearly impossible for the parents to co-parent effectively and could order sole custody here. Parents living far apart is not a reason in and of itself to award sole custody. So as you can see, there needs to be a legitimate reason to request sole custody, otherwise the default is joint. Next up is a physical designation. You can designate one parent to have primary physical custody, meaning that the child is at this home more. It doesn't mean the other parent doesn't still have substantial parenting time. It just means the scales are tipped slightly in favor of one side. Or you can have shared or split physical custody, meaning that the schedule is equal or very close to it. This is the part that often trips people up because they get caught up in the semantics of it all. Sometimes a physical designation is assigned simply to decide which school the child remains in or goes to. I caution you here because if you can't agree on the physical designation, this could stop all further productive conversations about parenting plans. Because maybe one parent wants a physical designation on paper and the other parent wants a shared designation. If this happens to you, skip over this and instead talk about what the schedule actually looks like in practice. If you can agree on a schedule, once it's laid out on paper, it will be easier to figure out if it looks more like a shared schedule compared to one where one parent has more parenting time, so it's physical. So don't get caught up on semantics. Now let's move on to creating a parenting schedule. This is the part where you want to be sure you're creating a schedule that is doable, practical, and reasonable for your family's life. Let's look at some common sample parenting schedules. You can find these samples in the Parent Copilot ebook as well. The first option is a 2-2-5 schedule. This would be an equal parenting time schedule where the days of the week never change. It also provides a longer stretch between transitions between homes. This plan can be effective in limiting parenting interaction or pick up and drop off if that's a point of stress in your situation. Exchanges can occur in the morning at school drop-off or a pickup after school. Next up is a variation on the 2-2-5 schedule. It shortens the time between homes. It's called a 2-2-3 schedule. This plan can work best for younger children who need to see both parents on a more frequent basis. In this type of plan, the parties will alternate weekend parenting time, much like the previous schedule, but the weekday parenting time will change. Now, the alternating schedule is another idea so that children are seeing both parents frequently. The weekends are alternated also, but the week changes. So in weeks 1 and 3, mom would have Monday and Wednesday, and in weeks 2 and 4, she would have Tuesday and Thursday. An arrangement like this would allow the child to see each parent almost every day, either in the morning or in the evening. The next schedule is called a week-on, week-off schedule. It means just what the title says. Parents who gravitate towards a schedule like this think it will limit the interactions between each other. And while it does do that, it also makes it very difficult for the parent whose week it is not to be involved and connected to the child. I don't like this one because it's too much time for a child to go without seeing the other parent. I've never seen a guardian ad litem recommend this schedule, and I have never recommended this type of schedule when I worked as a GAL. I've also never seen a judge order a schedule like this. This is a parent-focused schedule rather than a child-focused one, so please don't do it. Up to this point, all of the schedules have been a variation of a shared or split parenting schedule, but sometimes shared parenting just won't work. And in that case, we fall back onto the old standard. The old standard is a schedule that gives one parent primary time during the week while allowing the other parent to have some limited parenting time that could be an overnight or a dinner visit with every other weekend. There are a couple of variations of this schedule, but I share a common one that is used still. Now, another dinner visit could be added to this schedule so there is more frequent interaction during the week. But before you decide this is the schedule you absolutely must have, ask yourself if there is a reason why a shared wouldn't work. Is your apply child-centered, or does it have more to do with your emotions? Often we don't want to agree to a shared schedule because we're worried about missing out. It's a valid failing, but doesn't justify limiting your child's time with their other parent. Now, there are times when this would be an appropriate schedule. Sometimes the other parent doesn't want the weekly responsibility, so your schedule might look something like this. Once you have identified a schedule that would work best for your family, determine if there are any required variations that are needed to address one parent's work schedule or perhaps your child's needs. Sometimes logistical elements prevent one schedule from working, such as living far apart from each other. After the weekly schedule is agreed on, go through holidays and vacations, long weekends, and even snow and sick days so you have a plan. Use the Parent Copilot ebook to help you divide all of those up. Holidays can be shared with each of you getting some time on that day or alternated, but keep in mind you don't want your child shuffling from one house to the other and being subjected to 2 dinners, for example. So let's recap. First, determine legal custody. Second, decide on physical custody. Third, create a weekly schedule. And fourth, agree on holidays and vacations. These 4 elements are the backbone of a parenting plan. Keep in mind your parenting plan will likely change and you will only have to go back to court if you can't agree. When you get caught up in a disagreement about your parenting plan, ask, is your disagreement child-focused? And if you want to know how my situation ended up, my ex agreed to review the calendar each month in advance to address any scheduling issues that either of us might have. If he needed to make any last-minute changes, he agreed that if I was not available, he would ask one of his parents to help out, and he would lose his parenting time, so to speak. So it was a hybrid approach, and it worked for us. So remember to remain open and flexible, and be a willow.